Hello, everyone. My name is Joanna Semendik, and my practice is called Embracing Change Therapy. And I hope you're enjoying the Facebook page where I post various articles on trauma and healing, as well as various inspirational, motivational information that helps you stay on your healing journey. And so today I'm offering a video series that I hope to put out monthly, talking about various topics such as trauma, attachment, neuroscience research, as well as various ways to heal from traumatic experiences. So today's video is to talk about trauma and just to learn a little bit more about what trauma really is, how it shows up in our bodies, and what are some various ways that we can heal from traumatic experiences. So let's start with a definition of trauma. So this is a definition that I like to use, and it simply means that trauma is an emotional wound or shock that causes substantial, sometimes lasting, damage to psychological development. Now, I would add to this definition, and I would say that trauma impacts all areas of our life, and that's psychological, emotional, spiritual, and physiological. So as you can see here, the trauma does impact their physiological body. Mainly, it's stored in our nervous system. As you can see, the picture on the left, the nervous system is depicted here, and it's spread all over our body. And I will speak in future videos about the polyvagal theory and break that down a little bit more. However, for today, what's just really important to know is that the trauma is stored in our bodies, and when triggered, it activates the sensations in our bodies that bring on distress, including some of the trapped emotions, as well as the uncomfortable sensations in the body. And so that's a really important piece to understand. So the idea of neuroception really comes from Daniel Siegel's work. And neuroception just simply means that we are sensing our environment with our bodies through our neural circuits. So I don't know if you've ever gone into a room, for example, where there might have been some conflict between a couple people or a group of people, and suddenly you can really feel the tension in the room. You feel like you're just walking into something tense. And so that is one way that our bodies are able to sense our environment, to let us know if we're in a state of threat or safety. For example, if you're walking into a healing center or meditation center, everything is really relaxed and calm and at peace, we can really feel that in our bodies, right? We get a sense of this peace within us, and that is, again, neuroception at work, telling us that we are in a safe, comfortable place. The other piece to consider is that our body is actually our subconscious mind, right? Because the conscious mind is what we're able to recall and be present to. A lot of the subconscious material is below the surface of the conscious. And in this case, it's the body that really stores all the subconscious material in our physiological structure, in our nervous system, in our cells, in various parts of our body. A lot of people hold it in their chest or their gut, and be able to bring it up once it's ready to integrate into the conscious mind through the body. That's where a lot of our trapped emotions are, trapped memories of the past that we just may not be ready to integrate, we may not be ready to face and be conscious of. So one thing to consider is that with the right tools and under the right conditions, we are able to access this information at any point in time. And I'll speak more about that when I speak about the different modalities that you can use to help yourself heal from trauma. So another important piece to consider with trauma is the intergenerational aspect to it. So research has shown, and these are two books that really speak about that, that trauma can get passed down through our genes up to 4 generations. So the trauma that you may be carrying in your body might be all the way to your great-grandmother or great-grandfather. So it can carry for a long time. And some of the beliefs and the behaviors and the reactions and the sensations and the fears can be passed down. So a good example would be, for example, a deer in the woods is trying out different, for example, different kind of plants, and then suddenly knows that by the smell of one plant, it's good to avoid that plant, right? So there's some kind of intergenerational information that got built into the deer's physiological makeup to have a sense of smell, and suddenly a memory that no, we don't go near that plant because past ancestors of that deer might have it had that plant and died. So there is really, really good information there to consider when you look at these studies. Now, what's interesting about these studies is that here we're looking at science to determine something that Indigenous people have known for a long time, right? And a lot of Indigenous teachings talk about the fact that we inherit our trauma, and that lives in our ancestral lineage, and that is part of ancestral healing that a lot of Indigenous people share with us through their teachings. So that's something to consider. So another aspect of trauma is the fact that the past is present in trauma. So, for example, traumatic memories are stored as these raw fragments of sensations in our bodies with the trapped emotions and memories. And so when they're triggered, they surface and bring about the distress that they carry in the present moment. So for example, if you have a conflict with your partner and suddenly you're triggered, what could potentially be happening is that a lot of the times that you felt rejected by other people in your life, whether it was your mother, your father, your siblings, previous classmates, teachers, can suddenly rise to the surface. And now it's not just a conflict with your partner, it's a conflict with your partner that's accumulated by all the other previous traumas of rejection that come forth. So whatever is in the past is actually now present as well. And sometimes you can see these exaggerated responses in a conflict that don't really match the situation. That's a really good example when the past becomes present and comes forward because it's triggered. However, once we attend to those wounds and do our work, we are no longer triggered by that. The past becomes the past. And now it's just a conflict with your spouse or your partner. Which is a lot more manageable to deal with rather than having to bring all your pain up all at once and having to deal with that. So what we know in neuroscience research is that once that emotional memory is processed, then the brain moves the traumatic memory into our long-term storage part of our brain, which is the hippocampus. And once it's stored there, the past becomes the past. This current trigger is now something that happened in the past. The brain is aware that it's happened in the past, and it no longer brings it up for you to look at. And that brings about that relief around that specific situation. And the trigger is gone. The memory is resolved, the traumatic memory is resolved, and the trigger is gone. And now we can be more in the present moment. The present moment is the present moment. So here's some examples of what lies at the root of trauma. So trauma is at the root of a lot of various symptoms. As you can see, there's a variety of different symptoms here. And I wonder if you're looking at this, if you can actually identify some of the symptoms you might be experiencing at this time. So this model is adapted from Janina Fisher, who is part of sensory motor psychotherapy, which is a form of somatic therapy. And she really nicely lays it out here for us. It's very clear that just about everything is related to trauma. Just about every type of mental health symptom that we face is related to trauma. Now, the piece that I want to highlight here for you as well is that I crossed out the use of the word substance abuse, mainly because I prefer the word substance use. And alongside of that, you can actually see that, substance use isn't just related to substances. It can be any addictive pattern. It could be any compulsive behavior, anything that encourages us to escape, numb, and avoid our current reality, right? So not being able to be comfortable at the present moment, we engage in these behaviors to move out of the present moment. So that could be something like gaming, gambling, sex, working out, working. There's so many different type of addictive patterns that we fall in, many different crutches that we tap into. For example, sugar. Yeah, sugar is a big one for a lot of people. Caffeine, they just become so normalized. We don't even think of them as a crutch until we actually stop and then realize that we need that substance or we need that thing in order to be able to soothe ourselves, right? So at the root of everything is the traumatic experience. So a lot of people will think, well, I'm not traumatized. I didn't go to war. I didn't get sexually assaulted. And this is where it's important to highlight. There are various types of traumatic experiences. Some people have suffered big T traumas, and some people have suffered the other traumas that maybe they don't understand for them to be traumatic. So here's the distinction I'd like to make. So big T traumas involve anything from going to war, being assaulted, being in a serious car accident, having a major medical procedure, surgery, being in some form of a natural disaster. So something that was that suddenly interrupted your life and something that was extremely dangerous. There was potential for risk to your safety, whether it was injury or death, or you witnessed something where someone else experienced something traumatic that is outlined in the big T trauma. So anything of that sort will elicit this sudden increase in symptoms, such as avoidance and intrusive memories, as well as mood changes, difficulty with sleep, difficulty with concentration. So things of that nature, right? So it's a very clear shift. A big event happened, and then there's all these symptoms. Now, the other type of trauma that we don't really talk much about and is really, really important, especially when it comes to complex trauma, which is developmental trauma, trauma before the age of 18, as we're growing up, as we're developing. We have small T traumas that we accumulate over lifetime. So small T traumas are these small incidences that are transitional in nature, that are challenging, that add up over time and can create a large T trauma impact. So let me show you another example of that. So a Jenga puzzle piece is a really good example of that. So say we have a series of different events such as bullying, neglect, abandonment, losses of relationship, family conflict, move, legal trouble, financial stress, anything like that. And we haven't had any resolution around that. And so we just say, okay, well, I just got to keep moving on with life, and keep moving forward. And we don't actually bring any resolution to these experiences. What happens is that they eventually start to stack up, right? Because all these things have impact on our nervous system, impact on our physical and mental health, and they stack up, stack up, stack up. And eventually, all it takes is that one last piece before the whole tower comes crashing down to the floor. So that's the experience of small T traumas that get accumulated throughout our lifetime, especially they have more impact if they're in our childhood and adolescence, until that one last straw breaks the camel's back, and then we experience large T trauma symptoms. So here's some good news. I'd like to use the metaphor of the sun and the moon, and just get a sense of which one you feel more connected to, so that we can use this as a metaphor. right? So whether you're connecting to the sun or the moon, what we know about these two beautiful planetary objects is that they are whole. They are round, they are whole, and they, no matter what happens, if it's during the day and we see the sun, it's a nice sunny day, or if the full moon is out and we see the full moon at night being highlighted by the light of the sun, no matter what, we know they're full. And even on days where maybe it's not sunny, maybe it is partially cloudy and the sun is partially covered or completely covered, as we have here in Vancouver on our rainy days where we can have no sun for a number of days. Or, it's a half moon, or it's a sliver of a moon, or it's a new moon where we don't actually see the moon. What we know that deep inside is that those two objects are completely whole no matter how we look at them, right? And at whatever time in the sky that we look at them. Now, I would like to bring the metaphor of trauma in the same way to you. Inside, we are fully whole and perfect. We are wholesome. We're full of vitality. We're at peace. Our true essence and our true nature is that of calmness, of strength, of wholesomeness. And the trauma is kind of like those clouds in the sky, or when we don't fully see the moon because of the way that it's orbiting around Earth. What we tend to see is that, the trauma is like the clouds that will come in and they will cover up our experience of being whole and strong. And when we start to identify with the fact that we don't see the sun in the sky, or we tend to identify with the fact that it's a new moon and we don't see the moon in the sky, it doesn't mean that it's not there, and it doesn't mean that it's not whole. Once we peel back these clouds of the traumatic experience, whether it's emotions, difficult emotions, or uncomfortable sensations in our bodies, or really dark memories, in the end, once we peel back those clouds, or we get that wait for the right time to see the full moon, it will show up, because we are whole. Our essence is whole. And so part of the trauma work and healing is to really rediscover ourselves again. Who are we when we are not traumatized? Who are we when we're not bothered by these intrusive memories or these difficult sensations when we're triggered? That's the key. The healing work is to really pull back the clouds so that you can finally see your true essence of who you are beneath that. And that's the beauty of post-traumatic growth, is really tapping into our real nature, our true selves. And so when it comes to trauma therapy, this is one way to do that. So for me specifically, the trauma therapy is to look at trauma recovery by looking at the different stages of therapy that a lot of trauma processing therapies utilize. So things like EMDR and somatic work very much utilize this 3 stages of trauma recovery as adopted by Judith Herman. So the first stage is really on how to establish safety and stability. So establishing a relationship with your therapist, being able to get to a place of feeling safe and comfortable in their presence, developing some kind of rapport, and also working on how to stabilize your symptoms. So when you're getting triggered, what type of triggers do you have? How do they show up? What are the different signs of overwhelm? And then also, what are some of the various self-care strategies that you can use to help yourself regulate your nervous system so that you can feel more in control, you can feel grounded and present, and you don't have to just keep going from one crisis to another. So once that is established and you get a sense of a really good grounded experience of being able to regulate yourself with various self-care strategies, then there's the option to move into stage 2, which is actually working with the traumatic memories. So a lot of counseling that's available out there is really much just focused on stage 1. Stage 2 is more of a specialized form of trauma therapy, where now you go into the traumatic experience of what happened and allow the processing to occur. So releasing any of the trapped emotions that are there, coming to a new narrative, a new resolution of what's happened, and being able to finally put the past in the past so that you can move forward with your life. And that work can take some time. It just depends on how many different experiences you're going to work on, and in what modality, because it looks a little bit different based on the modality you choose. And then once that is complete, then you have the ability to integrate that part of you that had the wounding, and integrate it into your adult self now, and being able to increase the self-love and self-compassion that's needed in order to have that integration process. Part of integration process too is learning how to have better boundaries with people that are in your life, or being more assertive, being very explicit when you mean no, being able to discern if the person that you're interacting with is someone who is healthy for you, or someone that you should really just have some boundaries around. So there's various different ways of integrating the material. That's just naming a few things here. And so just to kind of end off for today, so here are the various healing therapeutic modalities for trauma that I've already kind of mentioned some of them. EMDR, internal family systems, which is working with different parts of yourself, parts of your personality, and accessing the higher self, or self with the capital S, that will assist you with the healing process. Sensory motor psychotherapy, somatic experiencing. Those are two versions of somatic-based therapies that allow you to release the traumatic imprint from your body. Various forms of acupuncture will allow you to reset the nervous system to work in a way that is going to be more balanced, and also to release any of the trapped emotions by bringing in more of the chi energy, the life force, to really bring the balance back into the system. Cranial sacral massage really works with the subtle energies that allow a lot of the trauma discharge to happen. And things like trauma-informed yoga. So when yoga practitioners know how to support people through various stretches and allowing the release of trauma to happen, and being held and supported as the body is maybe shaking or moving energy through the body, and to really normalize that process, that it's actually a really good thing, not something to be afraid of. Holotropic breath work can really get at the birth trauma experience and any of the transpersonal realms. It really works on a very, very using evocative music and deep breathing processes with a safe container that really allows you to go into a deep state of consciousness and really access even in utero experiences, which is really powerful. Shamanic journeying allows you to go into a trance state with a shamanic practitioner who uses various shamanic rituals to be able to assist you to go into deeper states of consciousness, into your subconscious mind, body, that will allow you to bring resolution to the various traumatic experiences in the past. And then things like deep trance hypnosis, which will work with various brain frequencies that allows you to go really deep into your body so that you may be able to reprogram old beliefs, or bring in resolution to previous traumatic memories, maybe even memories that you've dissociated from and haven't had access to much. Also, psychedelic psychotherapy, there's a lot more research that is indicating that things like MDMA-assisted psychotherapy and psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy, along with things like iboga and ayahuasca that are seen in various retreats and all over the world, that can really assist with deep states of healing. And also a lot of research on microdosing. So people using small non-psychoactive doses of, or sublingual doses, I should say, of various medicines such as LSD and psilocybin, to be able to enhance their creativity, increase presence, increase connection. And those are some various helpful tools for trauma as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to putting out more videos on various topics. Feel free to pose any questions you may have, or comments, or some ideas for future videos that you'd like me to put out. I'd love to support you in that, or if there's any specific questions you have that are specific to your situation, then you can just private message me and I'll do my best to respond to that as well. So wishing you all a great day, a great week, and a great month. Take care for now.